The translation booth hummed with nervous energy as Dex Hartwell adjusted his earpiece for the third time in 10 minutes. Through the reinforced viewing panel, he watched the preparation chamber fill with the shimmering blue-green liquid that would allow the Aquarian delegation to breathe comfortably during the historic first contact negotiations. Nervous? Asked Director Walsh, settling into the observation chair beside him. Excited, Dex corrected, his fingers dancing across the linguistic interface. Do you realize this is the first time in human history we've encountered a species with such complex harmonic communication? Their language isn't just words. It's music, mathematics, and emotion all woven together. The chamber door dilated, with a soft hiss, and Dex's breath caught in his throat. 3 figures glided into the space with fluid grace that seemed to defy gravity. The Aquarians moved like dancers, their elongated limbs cutting through the liquid medium with elegant precision. But it was the lead delegate who captured his complete attention. She was unlike anything he'd imagined from the preliminary reports. Her skin held an opalescent quality that shifted between pale silver and soft aquamarine, marked with intricate patterns that seemed to pulse gently with bioluminescence. Flowing tendrils of what might have been hair or specialized appendages cascaded from her head, moving with the current of the chamber's circulation system. And then there were her eyes, large, luminous things that seemed to hold the depth of entire oceans. That's their chief diplomat, Director Walsh whispered, consulting his tablet. Naya Silverfin, if we're pronouncing it correctly. Dex nodded absently, his gaze drawn to the graceful way she moved. The Aquarian wore what appeared to be a living garment that flowed around her form, leaving little to imagination about her alien anatomy. Her torso was elegantly elongated, with what humans might recognize as feminine curves, though subtly different in proportion and placement. What caught his attention most, however, was a distinctive swelling along her lower abdomen, a natural formation that seemed both integral to her physiology and somehow significant. He'd studied the preliminary anatomical reports, but seeing an Aquarian in person was entirely different from clinical diagrams. Fascinating, he murmured, then caught himself. I mean, from an anthropological perspective. Director Walsh raised an eyebrow, but said nothing as the formal presentations began. Naya approached the communication panel, and when she began to speak, Dex felt a shiver run through him. Her voice was a cascade of liquid notes, harmonics layering upon each other in patterns that were almost hypnotic. Through his earpiece, the translation matrix worked to convert her words into standard English, but he found himself listening to the original as much as the translation. Greetings, people of the dry lands, came the synthesized voice. I am Naya Silverfin, speaker for the deep currents, and I carry the hopes of our people for understanding between our worlds. Dex leaned forward to activate his own translator. Welcome, Naya Silverfin. I am Dex Hartwell, and I will be facilitating linguistic understanding during our discussions. Your language is ... remarkably beautiful. He saw her luminous eyes focus on him through the chamber wall, and for a moment he could have sworn he saw curiosity there, a recognition that mirrored his own fascination. The next several hours passed in a blur of cultural exchanges and preliminary negotiations. Dex found himself increasingly drawn into the rhythm of Aquarian communication, discovering layers of meaning in their harmonic patterns that his translation matrix could only approximate. During a brief recess, as the Aquarian delegation conferred among themselves, Naya approached the wall closest to his booth. She placed a webbed hand against the transparent barrier, and her bioluminescent patterns seemed to brighten slightly. Through the translator, her voice came softly. Dex Hartwell, who facilitates understanding, you listen differently than the others. You hear not just our words, but our music. Your language is incredibly sophisticated, he replied, his own hand moving unconsciously to mirror hers on his side of the barrier. The harmonic structures contain emotional and contextual information that our linear communication systems can barely process. "You perceive much," Naya said, and he could hear something like approval in her original voice, even without translation. "Tell me, what else do you observe about my people?" The question caught him off guard. He glanced around the observation room, noting that the other humans were engaged in their own discussions, paying little attention to this side conversation. "I noticed that your physical forms are adapted for three-dimensional movement in ways that fascinate me," he said carefully. "The bioluminescent patterns seem to serve a communicative function as well as aesthetic." And Wlkot hesitated. "And?" There was definitely curiosity in her tone now. "And I noticed differences in your anatomy that I don't fully understand," he admitted. The preliminary reports were rather clinical. "Seeing your people in person raises questions about how your physiology relates to your culture." Naya's patterns flickered in what he was beginning to recognize as amusement. "You observe the breeding sac," she said matter-of-factly. "The what?" Dex felt his face warm. "The abdominal formation you've been trying not to stare at," she continued with what sounded suspiciously like gentle teasing. "It is where we nurture our young during the earliest stages of development. All mature Aquarian females possess them." "I wasn't staring," Dex protested, though he knew he absolutely had been. "Curiosity is natural when encountering the unfamiliar," Naya said graciously. "Your species hides such things, I am told. We do not. The breeding sac is a source of pride, a symbol of our ability to create and nurture new life." "It's elegant," Dex said, surprised by his own boldness. "Your entire physiology is beautiful, I mean, from an anthropological standpoint." "From an anthropological standpoint," she repeated, and he was certain now that she was amused. "Tell, Dex Hartwell, is it common for human anthropologists to find their subjects beautiful?" Before he could formulate an answer that wouldn't end his career, Director Walsh's voice cut through their conversation. "Hartwell, we're resuming in 5 minutes." As the delegation prepared for the next session, Naya lingered by the barrier. "Perhaps when these formal proceedings conclude, you would be interested in a more detailed cultural exchange. I find myself curious about human perspectives on beauty and connection." Dex's heart rate spiked. "I would be honored, Speaker Silverfin." "Naya," she corrected gently. "When we speak of personal matters, please call me Naya." As she glided back to join her fellow delegates, Dex realized that his role in this historic first contact was about to become far more personal than he had ever anticipated. The elegant alien who had captured his professional curiosity was about to become something much more significant if he had the courage to pursue what her words seemed to suggest. The resumption bell chimed, but Dex's mind was already swimming in possibilities as vast and deep as the oceans that had shaped the remarkable woman on the other side of the barrier. The underwater research facility hummed with a gentle vibration that Juno Cross had grown to find comforting over the past 6 months. Through the transparent walls of her pressurized habitat, she watched schools of bioluminescent fish drift past like living constellations against the deep blue backdrop of Aquarior's ocean depths. Her breathing apparatus had long since become second nature, the gill enhancement technology allowing her to work alongside her Aquarian colleagues in their natural environment. What she hadn't expected was how natural everything else would begin to feel, including her growing attraction to her research partner. The coral formations in Sector 7 are showing unprecedented growth patterns. Reef Tidicolor's voice resonated through the water with those distinctive harmonic overtones that never failed to send a pleasant shiver through her. He glided toward her workstation with that effortless grace that made her human movements feel clumsy by comparison. "Show me the data," Juno said, trying to focus on the holographic displays rather than the way the ambient light played across. Reef's silver-green skin. His bioluminescent markings were more subdued than those she'd seen on other Aquarians, creating subtle patterns along his shoulders and down his arms that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat as he moved closer. To manipulate the data streams, Juno found herself acutely aware of his physical presence. Like all Aquarians, Reef possessed an elongated, graceful form, perfectly adapted for aquatic life. His torso tapered elegantly to a narrow waist before flaring slightly at the hips, where she could see the distinctive bulge that housed his reproductive organs, a feature that had initially surprised her, but which she'd grown to see as simply another aspect of his alien beauty. "Here," Reef said, his webbed fingers dancing through the holographic interface. "The symbiotic relationship between the coral and the microorganisms is unlike anything in our historical records." Juno leaned in to examine the molecular structures, inadvertently brushing against his arm. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her Aquarian skin, was cooler than human flesh, with a texture like living silk that seemed to respond to touch. "Sorry," she murmured, pulling back. "No need for apology," Reef said softly, his large eyes meeting hers. "Your warmth is pleasant." There was something in his tone that made her look at him more closely. Over the months of working together, she'd learned to read some of the subtleties of Aquarian expression. The gentle pulse of his bioluminescent patterns, the slight flare of the gill slits along his neck, the way his head tilted when he was curious, all signs she'd come to recognize, and, if she was honest with herself, cherish. "Reef," she began, then hesitated. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course, Juno." He settled beside her workstation, his movements creating gentle currents in the water around them. "We have worked closely for many cycles now. Personal questions seem natural. I've been wondering about how your people view physical relationships. Attraction." She felt heat rise in her cheeks despite the cool water. The preliminary cultural exchanges covered basic social structures, but not intimate relationships. Reef's bioluminescent patterns shifted to a deeper, more complex rhythm. "Ah," he said, and she could hear what sounded like understanding in his harmonic voice. "You wonder about compatibility between our species." "I suppose I do," she admitted. "Is that ... inappropriate to ask?" "Not inappropriate, natural." Reef's patterns brightened slightly. "Though perhaps I should ask why this interests you?" "From a scientific perspective, of course." The gentle teasing in his voice made her smile. "Of course, purely scientific interest." "Then, scientifically speaking," Reef said, moving closer until she could feel the water displacement from his movement, "Aquarians form bonds based on intellectual harmony, emotional resonance, and physical compatibility. We do not distinguish between species when these elements align. And do you think ... Juno's voice caught slightly. "Do you think such alignment is possible between humans and Aquarians?" Instead of answering immediately, Reef reached out and gently touched her face, his webbed fingers tracing the line of her jaw with careful curiosity. "Your skin is so different from ours," he murmured. "Warmer, denser, but pleasant, very pleasant." Juno leaned into his touch, marveling at the alien sensation. "Yours is beautiful," she said softly. "The patterns, the way you move through the water, it's like watching art come to life." "You see beauty in our differences?" Reef asked, his patterns now pulsing with what she was beginning to recognize as excitement or arousal. "This is ... unexpected. Most beings find our anatomy strange." "Strange isn't the word I'd use," Juno said, letting her gaze drift along his form. "Elegant, graceful, fascinating, those are better words." Reef's gill slits fluttered slightly, a sign she'd learned indicated deep emotion. "Juno," he said, her name carrying musical overtones that made it sound like a song. "I must tell you something. Working with you these past months has been Significant for me. Significant how? In Aquarian culture, we believe that true partnership reveals itself through shared purpose and mutual curiosity. You have shown such genuine interest in our ways, such respect for our world. His free hand gestured toward the research displays. But more than that, you have made me curious about your world, your people, your physical form. Juno's heart rate increased, and she wondered if he could sense it somehow. I've been curious about you too, she admitted. More than curious. Then perhaps, Reef said, his patterns now glowing with unmistakable warmth, we should explore this curiosity together. In the interest of interspecies understanding, naturally. Naturally, Juno agreed, though her voice was breathier than she intended. Reef's hand moved to rest over what she assumed was his heart, though she knew Aquarian cardiovascular systems were quite different from human ones. Place your hand here, he said softly. When she complied, she felt not a heartbeat but a complex rhythm, almost like music made physical. What is that? Our life rhythm, Reef explained. Each Aquarian has a unique pattern. When we bond with another, our rhythms synchronize. He placed his hand over her heart. Your single beat pattern is so different, yet ... Yet what? Yet I find myself drawn to its simplicity, its strength. His eyes held hers. Juno, would you be willing to attempt something with me? What kind of something? A harmony trial. It is how my people test compatibility with potential partners. We attempt to synchronize our life rhythms through shared breathing and touch. The suggestion sent a thrill through her that was part scientific fascination and part pure desire. Is it safe for humans? I believe so. Your breathing apparatus should allow you to match our gill patterns and the physical contact required. Is ... double quotes. He paused, his patterns shifting. Intimate, but not beyond what you might call first-level physical bonding. Juno found herself nodding before she'd fully processed the implications. I'd like to try. Reef's patterns blazed with brilliant light before settling into a steady, inviting glow. Then let us begin slowly. First, we synchronize our breathing. He guided her through a series of breathing exercises, their faces close together as she learned to match the rhythm of his gill movements. The sensation was unlike anything she'd ever experienced, a meditation that seemed to connect her directly to the ocean around them. Good, Reef murmured, his voice taking on those deeper harmonic overtones that seemed to resonate in her bones. Now, touch. He guided her hands to various points on his torso, teaching her to feel the complex rhythms that governed Aquarian physiology. When her fingers pressed against the area just below his elongated ribcage, she felt a strong, steady pulse that seemed to answer the beating of her own heart. Your life force is so warm, Reef said wonderingly, his own hands exploring the unfamiliar topology of her human form. So concentrated, so intense. And yours is like music, Juno replied, marveling at the alien sensations beneath her fingertips. Complex and beautiful. As their exploration continued, she became aware that his reproductive anatomy was responding to their contact. The bulge at his lower abdomen becoming more pronounced, its surface taking on a subtle glow that matched his other bioluminescent markings. Is that ... double quotes she began, then stopped, not sure how to ask. Natural response to compatibility, Reef said simply. Your presence, your touch, your life rhythm, they resonate with my reproductive systems. It is a sign of potential harmony. Potential. For what, exactly? Reef's patterns pulsed with what she now recognized as gentle amusement. Not what you might fear, Juno Cross. Aquarian and human biology are too different for traditional reproduction. But compatibility, pleasure, bonding, these are possible. Bonding? The formation of a pair bond that transcends species. Rare, but documented in our histories when two beings from different worlds find perfect harmony. His eyes held hers. What we are experiencing now, it is the beginning of such a bond if we choose to pursue it. Juno felt a wave of emotion wash over her: excitement, fear, desire, and something deeper that she recognized as love. And if we do choose to pursue it, then we would be the first human Aquarian bonded pair in recorded history, Reef said, softly. Pioneers in more than just marine research. The weight and wonder of that possibility settled between them like a promise as they floated together in the deep blue sanctuary of the ocean depths, their different worlds beginning to merge. Through touch, trust, and the profound connection that transcended the barriers of species. The cultural center's main gallery thrummed with an otherworldly energy as Phoenix Rivera stepped back to examine her latest canvas. Swirls of bioluminescent paint, a gift from the Aquarian Arts Collective, created patterns that seemed to pulse and breathe in the artificial twilight of the exhibition space. The resonance frequencies are off by 3 harmonic intervals, came a melodious voice from behind her, rich with those liquid overtones that had become as familiar as her own. Heartbeat over the past month. Phoenix turned to find Tide Moonwhisper, emerging from the shallow performance pool that had been installed specifically for their collaboration. Water cascaded from his elegant form as he moved onto the gallery floor, his specialized breathing apparatus allowing him to work in both environments. 3 intervals? Phoenix raised an eyebrow, wiping paint-stained fingers on her work apron. Are you criticizing my artistic interpretation, Maestro? Tide's bioluminescent patterns flickered in what she'd learned was his version of laughter. I would never presume to critique such magnificent chaos, he said, gliding closer to examine her work. I merely suggest that if you shifted the blue harmonics slightly, they would better complement the sonic layer we're building. Show me, Phoenix said, gesturing toward the control interface that managed their multimedia installation. As Tide moved past her to reach the controls, she caught the scent that always accompanied him, something like sea spray and ozone, with an underlying sweetness that was purely alien. His proximity sent a familiar warmth through her, though she'd been trying to ignore such reactions for weeks now. Their collaboration had begun as a straightforward cultural exchange project, human visual arts combined with Aquarian sonic sculptures, to create something entirely new. What Phoenix hadn't anticipated was how working with Tide would affect her on such a personal level. Here, Tide said, his webbed fingers dancing across the harmonic interface. Feel how the frequencies interact. He activated the sonic component of their installation, and Phoenix felt the sound waves wash over her skin like a physical caress. The colors on her canvas responded, shifting and deepening in rhythm with the musical patterns. That's incredible, she breathed. It's like the painting is singing. Art should engage all senses, Tide said, his large eyes reflecting the shifting lights of the installation. Your people create beauty for the eyes alone. We create beauty for the entire body to experience. Together, we make something neither species could achieve alone. Phoenix found herself studying his face as he spoke, noting the way his bioluminescent patterns intensified when he discussed their work. Over the weeks of collaboration, she'd grown fascinated by every aspect of his alien beauty, the graceful line of his elongated limbs, the way his movements seemed to flow like water, even on land, and yes, the pronounced bulge at his lower torso that marked his mature reproductive anatomy. Phoenix? Tide's voice drew her back to the present. You seem distracted. Sorry, she sighed, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. I was just thinking about the project. Were you? There was something knowing in his tone that made her look at him more closely. His patterns had shifted to a deeper, more complex rhythm that seemed almost intimate. What's that supposed to mean? Instead of answering directly, Tide moved closer, close enough that she could feel the cool air displaced by his movements. In Aquarian culture, we believe that true artistic collaboration requires complete honesty between partners. You have been holding something back. I have not, Phoenix protested, though even to her own ears it sounded weak. Your biorhythms change when you look at me, Tide said softly. Your breathing patterns alter. Your surface temperature increases. These are signs of appreciation, yes? Phoenix stared at him, caught between embarrassment and amazement. You can tell all that just by being near me? Aquarians are sensitive to the energy fields of other beings, Tide explained, his patterns now pulsing with what looked suspiciously like affection, especially when we spend much time in close proximity. I have been ... monitoring your responses to me. That's either incredibly invasive or incredibly flattering, Phoenix said, trying to decide which emotion was stronger, mortification or attraction. I hope it is flattering, Tide said, reaching out to touch her paint-stained hand with surprising gentleness. Because I must confess, your energy patterns have been affecting me as well. Affecting you how? In response, Tide gestured toward his own body, and Phoenix saw that his bioluminescent markings were glowing more brightly than usual, the patterns extending down to the reproductive bulge that had been the subject of her covert fascination. Aquarian reproductive systems are highly responsive to compatible energy signatures, he explained matter-of-factly. Your presence has been stimulating certain biological responses. Phoenix felt her mouth go dry. Are you saying that I'm turning you on just by being around you? A crude but accurate translation, yes. Tide's patterns shifted to what she was beginning to recognize as amusement, though turning on implies a simple physical response. What I experience with you is more complex artistic resonance combined with biological compatibility. And that's normal for your species? When we encounter a being who harmonizes with our creative and reproductive frequencies, yes. Tide stepped closer, his cool skin almost touching her warm human flesh. The question is whether such responses are welcome. Phoenix found herself staring into his large, luminous eyes, seeing depths there that had nothing to do with his aquatic nature. Tide, I have to ask, is this just biological response, or is there something more? For my people, there is no distinction, he said softly. Body, mind, and spirit are one continuous system. What my body responds to, my consciousness embraces. What my mind appreciates, my reproductive systems acknowledge. And what do you appreciate about me? Tide's free hand moved to hover near her face, not quite touching. Your chaos, he said simply. Your wonderful, unpredictable creativity. That defies all logic. Your warmth, not just physical, but emotional. The way you approach art like a warrior approaching battle, fierce and uncompromising. You make me sound more interesting than I actually am, Phoenix said, though she was leaning into his almost touch. You make yourself more interesting than you realize, Tide corrected. And you have not answered my question. Are my responses welcome? Phoenix looked at him, really looked taking in the alien beauty of his form, the way his patterns pulsed with life and emotion, the graceful curves and angles that were both utterly foreign and somehow perfectly right. They're more than welcome, she said finally. They're reciprocated. Tide's patterns blazed with sudden brightness before settling into a steady, warm glow. Then perhaps we should explore this compatibility more directly. What did you have in mind? Aquarians have a tradition called harmony weaving, Tide explained, his voice taking on those deeper overtones that seemed to resonate in her bones. Partners create art together while in physical contact, allowing their energy signatures to merge and influence the creative process. That sounds ... Phoenix paused, considering. Intimate, very intimate, Tide agreed. It is how we test artistic and romantic compatibility simultaneously. Would you be willing to attempt such a collaboration? Phoenix looked around the gallery space, at the installation they'd already created together, at the way their separate artistic visions had merged into something beautiful and unprecedented. Then she looked back at Tide, at the patient hope in his alien features, and made her decision. "Show me," she said simply. What followed was the most extraordinary creative experience of Phoenix's life. With Tide's cool, alien hands guiding hers across the canvas, their bodies pressed together in artistic embrace, she discovered that painting could be a full-body experience. His sonic vibrations traveled through her skin, influencing her brush, strokes in ways that bypassed conscious thought entirely. The artwork that emerged from their harmony-weaving session was unlike anything either species had created before, a fusion of visual and sonic elements that seemed to pulse with its own life. But more than that, Phoenix found herself responding to Tide's alien presence with an intensity that surprised her. His reproductive anatomy, pressed against her hip as they worked, pulsed with rhythms that seemed to echo in her own body. When she mentioned this, Tide explained that Aquarian biology was designed to create harmonic resonance with compatible partners, regardless of species. "Is this how all Aquarian relationships begin?" Phoenix asked during a break, her body still humming with unfamiliar sensations. "The fortunate ones," Tide replied, his patterns now displaying what she'd learned was deep contentment. "Though I have never experienced such perfect resonance with a non-Aquarian before. Your energy signature seems uniquely compatible with our reproductive harmonics." "And what does that mean, exactly?" Tide's expression grew more serious. "It means that my body recognizes you as a potential life partner, despite our obvious species differences. My reproductive systems are preparing for bonding behaviors that should be impossible between human and Aquarian physiology." Phoenix felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. Bonding behaviors? The formation of permanent pair bonds through shared creative and physical intimacy, Tide explained. "It is the deepest form of connection my people recognize, the joining of two beings into a harmonic whole that enhances both while diminishing neither." "And you want that? With me?" Tide's patterns pulsed with unmistakable warmth and affection. "I want to explore the possibility with you, if you are willing. What we have created together, both artistically and personally, suggests we might achieve something remarkable." Phoenix looked at their joint artwork, at the impossible beauty they'd created by merging their different perspectives and abilities. Then she looked at Tide, at the alien being who had somehow become essential to her happiness in just a few short weeks. "I'm willing," she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "I want to see what we can create together in art and in life." As the gallery lights dimmed around them, and the installation pulsed with the rhythm of their joined creative spirits, Phoenix realized that she was embarking on something unprecedented in human history. But looking at Tide's glowing patterns, and feeling the harmonic resonance between their different forms of life, she couldn't imagine wanting anything else. Their collaboration had become something far more than either had planned, a bridge between worlds built from paint and sound, passion and possibility, proving that the greatest art emerges when different forms of beauty learn to harmonize together.